Welcome, welcome, HC Leadership podcast listeners. Thanks for tuning in today again. And we have another guest today, and we're super excited. We've been trying to catch up with Chief DeSessa for, I don't know, a couple months now since we met down at Teeks and Texas in early January. And we finally were able to make our schedules work and get him on the show today. And we'll let him do his introduction. And we got Kyle and Carrie here today, as always. And today in Virginia, we are excited. It was almost 90 degrees today. And Kyle, it is like, freezing Illinois weather for you as well with tornadoes. So
Pretty
all
much.
over the country has been crazy. And Chief here is in Texas, joining us from Texas. So we are spanning the country today. So we are super excited that you were able to join us and you shipped us your book, which I have gotten into. And we were talking before we hit record that it's kind of our love language. A lot of what you write about is right up our alley. It is what Kyle and I believe very strongly in. And so I've underlined like 1,000 things in the book to try to highlight and bring up and we can talk about and, you know, hear it directly from you what made you so passionate to write those things that you wrote. And it definitely comes across as very authentic and genuine. And I'm sure if we ask the people around you, I could just tell like it's you and that it's not something that words you just wrote down because you think they sound good. So tell us about you. I know you prior military service and contract work and came up through the ranks in your fire department. So all the things about you.
Absolutely. Spot on. Hello, everybody. And yeah, you nailed it. Um, I am Sam DeSessa, and I started off my first 9 years or so with the Air Force straight out of high school, 17-year-old kid. Parents had to sign me into the military, and um, my dad was stationed in Germany at the time, so shipped me from there to the States, went to basic in San Antonio. Did my 9 years and got out, did about 2 years in contract world, private military contracting. And then that ended up just kind of being um, something that I just kind of lost a passion for and such. So I really wanted back in the fire service, wanted to be a firefighter since I was a kid. Um, Cross trained into EOD when I was in the Air Force because that was supposed to be a really great career field, a lot of brotherhood, and still did not being the same. So when they had an opening to come back into the fire department, I jumped on that opportunity. So I went fire department, EOD, back to the fire department, contracting world, then came to the base that I'm at now as a civilian. So I came here as a firefighter and worked my way up fire chief. And to your point, yeah, I do believe in all those things in the book. And if you read, as you've been reading through the book, and if people will take the time to read it, it is absolutely in my voice. And it was turned down by two different publishers because of exactly that. Wasn't kind of polished and professional enough. And I felt that we had enough polished professional leadership books out there. What we needed is someone to just have a conversation about leadership with, not being talked to about leadership and their theory on leadership and those kind of things. And so I wanted it to be very authentic, very raw, vulnerable, just transparent, and just should absolutely sound like a conversation with me. So and I've had several people that know me that have read the book, and they say exactly that, that man, it was just like sitting down and having a chat with you. And they really appreciated that. So um, I was not willing to um, I was not willing to change the book to fit some publisher's agenda on what they wanted, what they expected. It goes back to know your audience, right? Every time you're giving a talk, every time you're speaking on a podcast or you're doing anything like that, know your audience. That's basics. For us, that's fire instructor one kind of stuff. And so I felt like I knew my people enough that us as an industry that I could speak to all of them uh, in my authentic voice.
That's what I loved the most about it was it did feel like a conversation and it felt very practical in our world. It was very here's the advice, here's how to put it into practice and here's how it's worked for you and some life experience involved. So that's what I liked the most about it was it wasn't somebody trying to, put some fancy leadership theory down on paper and, now try it and see if it works. It was real to me, which I think is the most important thing. So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Exactly the goal. The fact that you said you've been highlighting and underlining those kind of things. I love when somebody sends me an amazing picture of them with the book cover doing something cool. But I really love when somebody sends me a picture and it's highlighted, it's underlined. People have tabs on the different pages and something spoke to them. I've got a deputy chief of training in a pretty good sized city around us here that took those what so what now what's and loaded them into his Outlook calendar and then sent me a screenshot of it. And because they were just things he wanted to weekly process through and put into practice. That was just those right there are the most amazing compliments that I could get. Is that Carrie all the way up there in Vermont is highlighting and underlining a book and it's making a difference to somebody out there. So makes it worth the
Yeah,
while.
and I don't know if we mentioned it yet, but the book we're talking about is
Oh,
called
yes, sorry.
Brotherhood is a Verb, which is awesome, and, there it is, Carrie just showed it, not just another damn leadership book, and, it's really raw and real, and it's really good. And to start diving into it just a little bit, because I'm sure we'll talk about a bunch of things. For me, when I see that word brotherhood, it makes me cringe, uh, because, everybody's experiences around have shaped them in some way or another, and it's a term, and I would guess to say that we agree, it just with the title, it is action, right? It's not words, but I'm accustomed to a culture that like stands behind the word, but the actions don't follow. When we really look at brother and we look at family, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
are we really treating each other that way? Or is there some type of culture that we have that we've redefined what brother means? And do we just try to hide behind that? So, for example, a lot of what I see and, some of my experiences have been is we'll be a brother, quote unquote, only when it gets bad enough. Only when your life gets bad enough will we step in and try to help you. But through the day-to-day stuff, no, no, rub some sand on it. That's not a big deal. Don't worry about that. You're weak, you're soft, all the things, all the things. But once it gets bad enough, like, you're dying of cancer or you need a big GoFundMe thing, now we show up. And we stand behind this word of brotherhood. If you could tell, I'm very emotional about this. So I really
It should
like
be.
seeing, I really like seeing brotherhood as a verb. There is so much action that needs to happen. And I'm not saying that I know it all, that I do it all right. Like I get it. I make a lot of mistakes too. And I still have a lot of learning and growth to do as well. And I've slipped up from time to time for sure. And so I just really appreciate, it's the actions behind what we do, not the words we say, because words, you could say whatever you want. It doesn't make it true. We could say whatever we want and it doesn't make it true. What are our actions telling us? So, just that term for me, it's like a trigger almost. It's like, all right, and I'm sure there's great organizations out there that exemplify that, and not just in the fire service, but in the military and even corporate world where they have strong cultures. But yeah, it's just the experiences that we all have, and they're all different. Where we could get together and talk about it on the stuff that we, totally agree with in terms of that action of what brotherhood looks like.
Yeah, and to your point, it's it's almost worse when they do the inverse, which so you're talking about somebody who really on the day to day doesn't give a shit about brotherhood, but if things get bad enough, yeah, I'm gonna be there for you, brother. Um, it's almost worse when it's the other way around. It's like things are going well, hey brother, we're right, man, there for you every day. Oh, things are getting shitty, whoop, I gone, and they're nowhere to be found. Then what? Where the brothers at? Like what just happened? So, and another reason that people cringe a little bit when they see the Brotherhood on the title of the cover is one of the reasons it was turned down by another publisher, and that was that they didn't feel like the word was inclusive enough. And to be clear, my definition of brotherhood is all of our people feel like they belong. All of my people feel like they're family when they're home with us. In other words, when you get to my firehouse, when we get to our firehouse, we're family here, and it's family by choice. So if everybody doesn't feel like they belong, then you don't have brotherhood. So but you're right. The culture of saying brotherhood versus the culture of doing brotherhood is chasm between those things, vastly
Hmm.
different. Vastly different. Your people need to feel it. It's a feeling. It's a 6 o'clock in the morning on your way to work feeling. you know, whether you got Brotherhood or not. You're thinking about calling in sick, or you're going to pump the gas. Can't wait to get there. You know,
Right.
Yeah, and you mentioned in your book, and this goes across every industry, your culture, which ties into this whole concept that we're talking about is what your employees are feeling, you know, Sunday night before they have to be at work Monday morning or Monday morning driving to work. That's that's your culture and that's your brotherhood is, like I remember being on a shift and I hated to miss a day of work because it was like so much fun and it was like I was going to miss out. It's like
yeah,
that's brotherhood. And no, I obviously don't take any offense to the word, and I think most women in the fire service, if they're part of a good brotherhood, don't take any offense to that either.
yeah.
I can only speak
Well,
for myself, but
and in this day and age, looking around societal norms, those kind of things, and people making issues of something that doesn't have to be, I can understand where that would come across at people. But what I tried to relay to the publishing agency was that in the military, in the fire department, in the police force, in the people that I'm talking to in this book, when I say the word brotherhood, they're locked in. They're lockstep with what I'm talking about. They understand what brotherhood means. Now, of course, to Kyle's point, if you're in a department that doesn't actually have brotherhood, they're just talking about brotherhood, but they don't include the females. They don't include other people. They make them feel like shit. They make them feel lesser. They make them work twice as hard to prove themselves, or all those kind of things. Then brotherhood doesn't feel the same to you. I'm painting a picture of what brotherhood could look like and what brotherhood looks like for me. And when you get to certain chapters in the book, you'll understand where that was a fight to get to where we're at now compared to where we were before. So
Yeah,
you
the
have
one
to fight for that.
the one area that I am interested to hear kind of your take on and how to maybe overcome these challenges. I really like the one area where you talked about you don't need work life balance because we hear that everywhere now. Everywhere we hear that. And it's
We do.
almost, you made me think about it differently. It's like if people are claiming that they need work life balance, I may be one of those people. I'm not going to deny it. Is that a sign of a bad culture within organizations? And then to your point, we shouldn't need that balance. We should be stepping on the gas to get to work on Monday morning or excited. So then, yeah, we don't need that work life balance. So I guess my question, and something to explore with you is if you're in that culture when you desire that work life balance, you know, it's probably asking yourself why. And then how do you overcome that in terms of I know I need this because this weighs on me. I don't have an ability to change a culture in its entirety yet, right? We can make the small changes. So how do you overcome not needing that work-life balance when you're in an organization that makes you need a work-life balance? If that makes sense.
No, it does. It does, because depending on where you're at in your career, depending on where you're at in the org chart, has a lot to do with what leverage you're going to have, or what level of authority you're going to have to affect that kind of change. So hitting the gas, hitting the reverse here just a little bit. Let me kind of explain why I feel like work life balance in and of itself is not the proper term for what we're actually experiencing. So, work and life are not separate ends of a scale. Um, we have a work life blend. Our work and life are all part of life. Work is a part of life. It's not something separate from it. You do work, you do life, you do your home life, you do your work life. There is a blend to it now, especially if you are in emergency services, if you're in the military, if you're in somewhere where you hang out with your people when you're not on duty. Now I can understand a banker clocks in, they do their 8 hours, they go, I get it. You're not going to have, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of brotherhood to that. There's probably not going to be a whole lot of, but you're in a patrol car with somebody for 16 hours. You're, on a 48-hour shifts with people. You're seeing them walking by in a towel trying to change, you know what I mean? After work, like sometimes kind of uncomfortably, we're just around people a whole hell of a lot. You know, dude looks like Sasquatch going by. You're like, wow, I can't unsee it. So yeah, there's this blend to it. So I think our definitions are off. So in my theory here, you've got a scale of work and life. So if you use the work-life balance scale that they're referring to, it has to be that work is amazing, that work sucks and life is amazing. Okay. Have you ever been through a breakup while you're in the fire service? Or so is your home life amazing? You can't wait to get home after that shift. If you're on shift with people that you enjoy hanging out with, you're working on a shift with people that you've got a great culture, they're there for you. Um, kind of rather hang out at work, you know. Keep having the barbecue and and hanging out with my peeps and the homies and all that kind of good stuff. Great. Um, Not looking forward to going home where things are not so great. So what just happened to your work life balance scale?
Hmm.
Is flipped on its head.
Right.
Um, it really doesn't make sense when you think of it from that perspective. If you're in a crappy work environment and you have a great home life and you enjoy doing things off duty, then yeah, that scale makes sense. It just doesn't make sense for everybody's my
Hmm.
contention. So to me, I think it's kind of a redefinition of just saying like that work is as much a part of life as play is, and it's a part of it. So you'll know you're in a healthy work-life blend when you go on vacation and you're able to break away. Your people at work are handling business. You do not have to worry about what's going on at work. You might get the occasional texts about, hey, what's going on, this and that, whatever. But no matter what rank you're at, they're not bothering you. When I go teach for Teeks, I don't have people texting me about situations at work. They're problem solvers. They're going to figure it out. One of the worst things you can do to solve all your people's problems, you're robbing them of the ability to solve problems on their own. So as much as possible, I don't bother my people when they're off. Now, that's not necessarily a work-life balance, even though there is a balance to it. It's more the blend, but we don't need you right now. We need you to break away so that when you come back to work, you're a healthier version of yourself. But you'll know you're in a healthy work environment when you're off on vacation for 2 weeks and you have a great time. But towards the end of it, you're just kind of missing your people at work. You're just kind of missing some of the work that you do. If you believe in what you do, if you if you enjoy being at work, putting the reps in, if you enjoy going out training, if you enjoy those aspects of the job, you miss it when you're off. If you're missing work when you're off and then you're missing your family because you've been at work for 72 hours, you have a healthy work life blend. Because you've been at work a little too long, you should be missing your family. If you've been off a little too long, if you will, then you should be kind of missing your work. If you're missing either of those when you've been off for a period of time, then you have a healthy blend, and that's a good place to be. So what can you do about it? I always say control the controllables. So if you're the only firefighter on shift that wants to throw ladders and get better, then go out there and throw ladders. People will follow your feet far more than your words. If you say, hey, we should go outside and throw ladders, that doesn't get ladders thrown. If you get off your ass off that couch, you go outside, you throw a ladder, somebody's going to get curious walking by. What are you doing, man? No, I'm just practicing throwing ladders. Well, let me hold it for you. Next thing you know, it's two people out there throwing ladders. Next thing you know, somebody's walking by, there's three people out there messing with ladders. Next thing you know, your whole crew's out there throwing ladders. So I think just modeling the expectation that you want to see from people, it doesn't matter what rank you are. That was a firefighter in that example, going out throwing ladders. I know because I was that firefighter. And sometimes you can only control your rig, 3 other people. And eventually, as you climb the chain, then you're affecting more people and you're affecting more change. So there's that, just kind of modeling. I would say just modeling what you would like to see out of other people. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And either way, you're getting the reps in. You can only control the controllable, you know. So try and get on a crew or station that's proactive like that believes in the for them concept, for our citizens, for our teammates, for our brothers and sisters, and kind of go from there. Control what you can. You may not be able to affect change for the whole organization. When I was the assistant chief of ops, I could only really control my shift. And I kind of talk about it in the book, but not to be pretentious, but it started with I'm just going to control my shift. And then that's all I can do. Then I had people that wanted off my shift because I was making them work, but they were doing positive things, but they were having to work. And then eventually I had other people on the other shift that wanted to come to my shift because we were doing work. Exact same thing, different mindset. So eventually we had a pretty badass shift, and then it started bleeding over to the guys on the other shift, and then they started doing some of the things that we were doing. And when I say that, don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you, hey, look what I did. That's how I became a badass and I had a badass shift it's nothing like that. I'm telling you that if it weren't for other people jumping on board with that, if it weren't for more people, then I'd have just been running around with a title, not leading anybody. Real leadership takes followership. Those people chose to do that, and they chose to want to be over on our group, on our side. They chose to want to do more, and eventually it kind of bled over, and we've got about 90% of our people that are bought in to vision and bought into our goals. And in the last couple of years, we got accredited, and we just got our ISO class 2 rating, and hadn't been announced yet. So Texas will announce it sometime in like May, but we got our ISO class 2, and none of those things could I do on my own. So please don't think I'm bragging about me. I'm bragging about my people. Like, they chose to follow, they chose to do, and then they started leading more than just following me. Then they started leading. Then they started controlling the controllables, and then that's where culture.
Yeah.
Me running around talking about culture isn't shit. Fire chief talking about culture isn't shit. It's your people talking about culture. It's all the way down to your firefighters talking about the culture. That's when you know you've got a solid culture. When your people are defending your culture,
Well,
and it's not just coming from the top.
I think it boils down to exactly what you said. It's people follow your feet. Kyle and I'll say people follow your actions, not your words.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you're saying I value culture, but you're not doing in any of the things that you're preaching, or you say like, Kyle and I've had a discussion, or have talked about all of this talk of we value mental health. And then you have fire chiefs out there that won't give people leave to take care of their mental health stuff, or we're making fun of people that are going to therapy. Like, you can't
Yeah.
say that in one hand and then do this in another.
100%.
Those things have to match up. Your actions and your words have to match up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of the areas I'm pretty passionate about myself.
And I like in your book too, there's so many little things that make up this idea of brotherhood and that make up culture. And a lot of times we think it's this big, it's this big word, but it's all these little things. And like, I like one part that hit home for me is we talk a lot about empathy on this show, empathy and compassion and that kind of leadership, and how important that is. And I think sometimes we forget, or I forget to talk about too, the importance of the accountability part of that. And accountability for me right now is a buzzword that I am hating. I wish we could call it something else, because I think it gets very twisted. But you talk about empathy without accountability as enablement. And I think that is so important, is you can be so empathetic and so compassionate, but still have very, very, very high expectations and hold people very, very accountable. And that's the beautiful blend. And so I was glad that you mentioned that, because I think that is so important to this conversation of brotherhood and culture and all that stuff.
Yeah. And so if they're not calling it accountability, they're calling it ownership, right? Because extreme ownership, Jocko. So that's one of those words that a lot of people will use. They like to talk about discipline, they like to talk about ownership, talk about accountability. But then do they like being held accountable? Do they like being disciplined? Do they like when somebody calls them on their lack of ownership? Not typically. But that's what's needed, because that is exactly where people have the blind spots. And then when someone else calls them on it, you have to have a department that has a culture of humility, where we can set the ego aside. If somebody comes to you and they say, "Hey, you kind of got an area that I think we need to work on." One of the things we like to say in our department is that as leaders, we're paid to have the tough conversations. And so it's sitting people down and saying, "Hey, look, here's where you need to pivot. Here's where you need to adjust fire." And those guys at the varsity level, those girls at the varsity level, they're gonna lock in and go, "You know what? Copy that. Roger that. You're telling me you need to work on this. I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna get that fixed." We have a guy that very specifically had a real issue with having an attitude problem. It was always, it's one thing to have an opinion about something. It's another thing to always have to say it, I guess. And that was this guy, right? He didn't have the wisdom and discernment to go, "I'm not wrong, but I don't always have to say it. And I definitely don't have to say it with that attitude behind it." So we pulled him aside. We, as leadership, a couple guys pulled him aside, talked to him. He said, "Okay." Then he went to a training class, Fire Officer 1 somewhere, and got some leadership training. He was like, "Wow, come back. Now I see what y'all have been trying to do this whole time." Comes back with a whole different attitude and made an absolute 180. And we just promoted him to captain recently. And the dude is just on point. But had he not made those adjustments and pivoted like that, there's no way. One of our pillars for promotion is attitude, our number one. And so based on that attitude, he wouldn't have been promoted anytime soon. There was just too many people that have a better attitude. And he locked it in and he made the adjustments. And it was pretty awesome to see. He's doing great. So
And
little
that's tough.
success story.
That's people get so defensive when you call stuff like that out, but your culture of humility makes that easier for people. That's a
Well, I'm
regular.
not saying you got to sit there and smile while you're taking it, because
Yeah.
sometimes they need time to process it. They need time to process it. I had a somewhat of a funny story, but I can share it with you if you like. Is the guy who gave me the nickname Mufasa the second time I ended up with that moniker. Um, he was a captain when I first got here, and I like to be a joker, a prankster, and so I like to set up pranks and always be messing around. And I didn't get I put in for a promotion, I didn't get it. And I went to this guy and because we're buddies, and I said, man, I didn't get promoted. And I know what the other guys got. I've got more certifications. He's got a little bit more time in, but I really didn't understand, like, why was I passed up by this guy? And so my buddy says, Sam, I got to tell you something. You remind me of Stifler. And you remember Stifler from American Pie?
Yeah.
All right, it's embarrassing y'all, all right? Go easy on me. But he said you remind me of Stifler. And at the time I was like, yeah, right, bro. So why didn't I get promoted? He's like, nah, just think about it. I was like, okay. Like, so I'm thinking about it, I'm driving around, I'm thinking about some Stifler. I was like, Stifler's funny as hell, man. Like, Stifler's fun. And so the more you start thinking about that though, I went back to work after being off a couple of days. I said, hey man, gotta talk to you. And he said, what's up? He said, were you thinking about what I said? I said, yeah. And I said, so what you're telling me is nobody follows Stifler into battle. And he said, that's it. I said, copy that. I got to make some adjustments. So I could either wallow in my self pity and bitch about it, complain about it, gripe, whine, whatever, or I could accept that message and adjust fire and move on from there. Chose the latter, obviously. And had he never had that tough conversation with me, I might not have ever changed. Might have just stayed where I was at. So, and
Yeah.
same thing with this guy we just promoted recently. So it's amazing to me when somebody is able to set that ego aside and just lock it in and go, you know what, you're right. You know, so it's like an inoculation, right? It stings right now, but it's saving you for something in the long run.
Yeah, my supervisor recently came to me, and my goal, like the last few years, is to like do exactly what you're talking about. It's like take in if somebody's giving me feedback, there's some kind of truth in it somewhere, and I need to take ownership of it and figure that. And so my supervisor told me that I seemed irritated with some of my coworkers, probably more than I should be, and just certain coworkers. He was like, "You just seem so irritated with them," and I'm like, "I am." I was like, "You are right." And he was like, "Well," and I was like, "Okay." So I sat on it for a while, and I was like, "But I am irritated with them because this and this." And then I was like, "You know what? I've been in my position a long time. Maybe I should be mentoring them instead of being irritating with
Mm,
them or helping them instead of." So, yes, it's
that's
tough.
accountability, ownership, and discipline all wrapped into one right there.
And it's interesting you bring it up too, the Stifler example, and I've had conversations with people similarly, like, "Hey, people don't always take you very serious because you're this or whatever." But
Yep.
then they try to flip and do it a whole different way. And I'm like, "No, wait, you still have to do it your way, right? You still
Right.
have to be Sam, or you still have to be Carrier." And I've seen this with a couple guys that I've given feedback to, and they want to come in and act like someone else. And I'm like, nope, that also isn't. You got to find the right blend that's effective for your style.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. So primarily what I did was focus on just not being as much of a goofball. Definitely still joke around this and that, but not to that level. Uh, and then that guy that I was just talking about recently, he just started off by not really being so much different other than He just wasn't saying everything on his mind. He just wasn't being negative all the time. When he did need to bring something up, and we're all about see something, say something, like speak up, find a need, fill a need. We're all about that. So we want to hear it, but it's also how are you delivering the message? And so he didn't really change who he is or really the leader that was in there so much as he just repackaged how he was delivering messages.
It's good stuff. Good stuff.
So I kind of want to hear a little bit. You've alluded that you've been part of bad cultures before, bad organizations, or a bad time within an organization, whatever term we want to use there, where it was really challenging for you. Like how did you weather that storm? Obviously, we can look now where you're at now and the things you've done in your culture and the things that you put in your book, and it's all turned around and it's grown in a great direction. But like weathering that time, and I think that is some extremely valuable information for a lot of people to hear those stories of, hey, how do I weather this? Like, how do I get through? I know we talked about control the controllables, but sometimes it's like beyond that, like the mental aspect of it, because the emotions run high, whether it's anger, frustration, all these things. How do you control that? How do you weather it? Like, how do you just keep persevering on to get to the point where hopefully you are today, where others can eventually like see, hey, there is light at the end of the tunnel. It might take a year, it might take 5 years, it might take
Yeah.
10 years, but kind of how you weathered that, how you overcame, how you built resilience through some of those environments and experiences.
Yeah, you nailed it. Sometimes progress is made one retirement at a time, right? So, but you don't always want to wait around for
We're going to
that
have
day.
to quote that one.
It needs to be on a t-shirt or something. Yeah, so what I did may not work for everybody, so I want to
Yeah.
preface it with that. And
Yeah.
I do talk about it in the book, but I had that moment where I pulled into the parking lot and I saw certain cars and trucks and I verbally said some expletives. I'm the only person in the car. That's how you know you have a problem. If you're cussing by yourself in your car, you've got something going on. So did that, and I literally sat in the aisle. Like I haven't backed into a spot yet. I'm still in the I'm just looking at the parking lots, looking at these vehicles. I'm thinking, do I want to deal with this shit today? Do I really want to deal with some of these people? And it occurred to me, like, I'm the assistant chief of ops. So we work the same schedule as our people. So, I was about to do a 24-hour shift with some of these people. I thought, I'm the highest ranking guy on shift, and this is how I feel. How many of these other people feel the way that I do? And I'm allowing it to happen. Like, so it takes time to get there. So it's going to take time to reverse it. But I will say that day I hit the master reset, called everybody into the training room and had a conversation about half of them didn't enjoy. And again, this may not work for everybody, but I just started calling people out right there. I'm tired of you. I'm tired of you. I'm about tired of your shit. I saw your truck this morning and I almost went home. And I just kind of went like that. Pen was out of the grenade kind of thing. And they started kicking back a little bit. That was a day. And here's the secret sauce right here. The good guys started speaking up. The silent majority started speaking up. I couldn't change that culture on my own no matter what I did. I can be the orchestrator, but they've got to all practice the music, right? So I can stand up there waving my arms and acting a fool, left out of that room, and nothing ever changed. Could have been worse. I could have had a lot of, a lot of trouble could have followed that. And I was prepared for it. I'd already decided going into it. I said, I'm going to get this shit off my chest is what I'm going to do. Whatever repercussions come from it, so be it. If I get written up, whatever, it was okay. I'm going to speak my mind. And a bunch of people just started chiming in. Man, I feel that way too. Yep. I went home the other day. I didn't want to deal with you. I didn't want to, and then it was just like, I can't say that I recommend it because it may backfire. It might, I mean, depending on what you say, it could be a whole big, you could end up with time off over it. I don't know what to tell you for your organization. What I can tell you is this. If you don't do the master reset the way that I did it, in other words, just dropping expletives at people and telling them that you don't want to see their face if you don't have to, a better way to go about it is to just pull everybody in there and just start talking to all your good troops that feel the same way and say, look, if you want this culture to suck, if you want this culture, if you want to come in here and deal with this crap every day, be quiet. Don't say anything. But if you want to come in here and have a solid work culture, you've got to speak up when you hear somebody talking shit. If they're talking crap about somebody on another work group, they're talking about somebody who's not at work, they're talking about other chiefs, they're talking about other firefighters. I don't care who it is. Cut that shit off. Let them know. Is that your story to tell? Oh, okay. Well, if it's not, I don't want to hear about it. You know, you've got to step up, and you've got to speak the expectation of what you want that shift or that department to look like. What is that culture going to look like? If you allow gossip against people you don't really care for and you're a leader, everyone's going to assume that you allow other people to talk crap about them when they're not there. So you've got to cut it all off, all that kind of stuff. The gossip stuffs, it just doesn't serve anything. You've got to erase the us versus them mentality. That's really kind of the crux of it. And we've got that going on, of course, politically across the nation, societally across the nation. Everything is us versus them. When you really think of anything, it's us versus them. Two-party system wasn't enough. Sorry, George Washington, he warned us about that. But now we've got 3-4 different kind of parties, tea parties and other kind of freaking parties. And everybody's breaking off in these factions of us versus them. Then when you've got A, B, and C shift, oh, us versus all them. You've got the city you work for. You've got city employees. You got fire department employees. Well, actually, we all belong to the same city. But guess what? You're not one of us. It's us versus them. Management versus bargaining unit. Oh, you're union. You're not. Oh, yeah, us versus them. The best departments are, again, a blend. Get the chiefs working with your union officers and such. I know, please understand, I know that there are organizations out there that have poor leadership. Now, here's that big fat ass pill we're going to swallow together. There's a lot of bad followers out there too. That's that, man. And sometimes those leaders, when they leave and guys look back on it, they go, oh shit, he really wasn't that bad a guy. It's just this whole big ass group over him gave him such a hard time, he left. He really wasn't that bad a guy. He was really trying to make positive changes. So sometimes you don't have a leadership problem, you got a followership problem. And it's not always that way. So again, it's not always that way. But I can tell you, every successful organization I've ever worked for, been a part of, they erase that line of us versus them. And they find a way to navigate the day as a team with a bigger why than our little bullshit us versus them stuff that we're doing every day. When you can get over that, then you can start being productive and getting things done, working together to accomplish it. Because again, I couldn't change the culture. I couldn't get ISO rated. I couldn't get accredited. I couldn't do any of these things by myself. I know how to do the paperwork, but when they come in to do the inspections and evaluations, that kind of stuff, it requires my whole team. They don't want to see the fire chief or when I was a deputy chief or when I was assistant chief. They don't want to see me dancing around doing the dance monkey dance show. They want to see the whole department plugged in. Accreditation is about the whole department. ISO is about the whole community, right? So it takes everybody working together. And once you get to a place where we work on the egos and we get the egos set aside and we're all working for the same ultimate goals, we get behind an ethos and things like that, then we can start being productive. And like I said, erase those lines of us versus them, because there's too many of those. There's just way too many of those already. And we fall into that. We fall in these then you've got these little cliques on shift, right? So anyway, that was some of the biggest things that I wouldn't say I did, because again, I just started saying some words and other people jumped in. But if it wasn't for the fact that they also joined me in that conversation and the silent majority didn't speak up, we wouldn't have had the progress that we did. We'd still be 10 years behind where we're at now.
But I think, and part of it is probably because I've read some, the words you put on paper. But my guess is you could say those words in that way because they knew you cared. They knew deep down you cared, and so you could say the hard things and have those conversations, and it turn out the way it did.
I had built a lot of relationship capital with a lot of people. From the minute that I got to this base, I've been trying to just take care of people, and a good bit of them knew that. And so the people that I was talking to that day, for the most part, that were negative and all that, they weren't going to hear my message anyway. Really, it wasn't really the big change from that day. Wasn't that the negative people heard me. It was that the positive people finally spoke up and said, we feel the same way. That was really the biggest difference.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then we started acting accordingly. It was like, from now on, we step up. From now on, no one gets in our way. We got work to do. Let's do it. No excuses. No more. They don't let us this or that. Like, let's just. I kind of untied a lot of hands, and we let go of a lot of excuses and started getting productive.
Yeah, saying the things that were on people's mind, and you mentioned that in the book too about bad leaders. Sometimes it's not that they're a bad leader, it's that they're ignoring bad behavior,
Yeah,
or, correcting some of that stuff, and I that's what I see sometimes that drives me the most crazy is we're ignoring some behavior that's killing our culture, and then we
yeah,
just have the conversations, just have them.
yeah. You have to set an expectation. So my department's expectations are we have three of them, and if your expectations are on a giant plaque in the chief's office and it's paragraphs full of information and nobody has them memorized, it doesn't mean anything. It's not affecting your daily operations. So they have to be something that people can get their minds around, people that can memorize it and they know that this is the expectation that they have for us. And our departments are about as raw as it gets. Not everybody would get away with these, but it's don't be an asshole, give a shit, and step up. So just three pretty easy to follow. And we call them our 360-degree expectations. So as the chief, if I see a firefighter that's not meeting one of those three expectations, I can call them on it. Conversely, if a firefighter sees me violating one of those three, they can call me on it. So without going through supervisors in between or all those little rank game things, it is a true 360-degree expectations for our departments.
Do you have it on a T-shirt?
I have it on a big ass canvas in our kitchen and in our training room, and I think in our conference room. But we did talk about doing that. And of course, I've got like an asterisk over the shit or all that, like the a hole or whatever. So we did put a little, so it's not the word, but you know, I think I did in the book too. Anyway,
So
yeah,
as we, we're always looking forward, and I'm sure you're always looking forward and progress and looking at, years down the road and where
yeah,
the organization goes and the culture grows and building it. And, we always talk about the new people coming in and different generations and meshing them and getting them all in, and we're seeing a lot of Gen Z coming in, and it's a much different industry, much different people, right? They grew up in much different worlds than we grew up in, and they respond differently. So as you try to get them into this brotherhood and they walk in the door day one, kind of what does that look like in terms of maybe when you walked in the door day one? I'm sure it's a lot different, but to get them accustomed to the culture and into the brotherhood in terms of looking forward. So when you're gone and out of the picture, a lot of these values are still hanging around. How do you instill that first day these young men and women are walking through that door?
right. So first and foremost, really, my people come generally from the military, so they've had 4 years of military service. So the youngest I'd get them is probably 22, 23, and they've got some life under their belt before they get to us. So they already know how to follow leaders. They already know how to be a good follower. And we vet them ahead of time in an interview process. And we make sure and bring up the fact that these are our expectations and are these expectations that we believe that they could get behind and that kind of stuff. And we have them get on our Facebook and look at our department and we get on theirs and we sift through their stuff too. And so we've got enough people that want to come to our installation that we're blessed by the fact that we can be pretty choosy. We're in the DFW area. We're by the airport. A lot of people have family kind of in the area. So I don't care you do. So a lot of people do. So we've kind of got pick of the litter. We're really big on, we have 4 pillars for promotion and 4 pillars that we look at for our annual evaluations. So whether it's a fire inspector, a firefighter, a battalion chief, doesn't matter. Everybody has the same four, and it's attitude, teamwork, grit, and leading by example. So we're going to evaluate you on those things annually. When it's time for promotion, those are the 4 pillars that we're going to hold you against. So when we're trying to hire somebody, we ask a lot of questions that lead us down those paths. Are they sitting there telling us on the phone or in person or whatever for the interview that they're wherever they were at last, their last department, they were a freaking superhero and everybody else was a piece of crap? because that's not teamwork. So that's a pretty good way to get a red line drawn through your name in our process. You talk about leading a team and what the team did and this and that. A lot of teamwork talk. I'm all about that. But if you got that little hero complex stuff going on, and it's all about you. Don't get me wrong. You got to talk about yourself in an interview. I understand that, but it's the difference when it's
Yeah.
super cocky about me, and nothing about the team. Then we're you know anyway. All of our questions have something to do with the four pillars. So.
That's good stuff. And I ask this question when we go out sometimes and speak. And just spoke in Virginia Beach, and I asked the group I was with, you got to make sure you're hiring people that are going to match your values, and you can, mold them somewhat, but a lot of that stuff they just come with or don't. But it just baffles me, the departments, and I think Kyle is in this situation when you can't ask any follow-up questions in an interview. So many people are strapped by HR to only ask what's on the paper. And, to your point, you got this hero guy that's feeding you all this BS and you can't ask any follow-up questions. Like, how do you grade that? I'm going to keep asking questions until I weed it out of you that it is not true.
My favorite question is, tell us a little about yourself, but nothing that's in your resume, and see where they go with it.
Yeah.
That's a question. As long as you're asking it to every candidate,
Mm-hmm.
HR can't get behind that. As a matter of fact, you begin that question with, "Hey, this isn't a scored question. However, tell us about yourself, but nothing that I can find in your resume." So it's funny to me how many people can't follow directions. They start telling you about a bunch of shit that's in their resume right off the bat. I'm like, okay, I already said I want to hear about what's in your resume. But it's amazing how much other stuff they'll start talking about. And if you're quiet, that's where the interviewers tend to blow it. They'll move on to the next question for the candidate. Don't let them let you know when they're ready to go to the next question. That's the biggest mistake we make as interviewers. So if we're interviewing right now and Carrie, you get done with the question, we'll have about a 10-second silence. And nobody likes silence. So then I'll go, okay, Carrie, is that all you had for that question? Now, that's a terrible question to ask somebody during an interview anyway, because now it implies that you didn't give me enough information. Do you have any more you want to give me, Carrie? Oh, yeah. And then you'll jump on, maybe say a little something else. Or you go, yeah, that's all I got for that. But if I'd have just shut up, let it go on for 15, 20 seconds, you're going to get tired of the awkward silence. You're going to keep talking. And that's where you're going to get a lot better information, because now we're getting into some unscripted stuff. So,
Yeah, people will be honest with you if you give
yeah.
them the chance to.
If
Yeah.
you give them a chance, if you give
I've
them
heard
enough
some stuff
time.
in some interviews like, "Ooh, did you
Yeah,
say that
because
out
they've got
loud?"
their sticky note, but they've already talked. They've already spoken to the sticky note. Now we're in the awkward silence. So now you're about to find out who they really are, because they're going to start ad-libbing. That's where the magic happens. So again, you can, if you just ask them right off the bat, hey, I'm going to ask you a warm-up question. This is not a scored question. It's just, we found that giving people an opportunity to warm up a little bit before an interview is the best way to get your juices flowing here. So tell us a little about yourself, but here's the only catch: don't tell me anything that's in your resume. And I'm just telling you, the amount of stuff that they'll talk about, and that is oftentimes very unscripted for somebody. So they actually start talking about what they like doing, what their hobbies are, whatever else. And if you just shut up, let them talk. That's the biggest thing. Shut up and let them talk. You're the interviewer. They're supposed to be the ones talking, not you. Zip it. Ask your question and then go radio silent. Let them transition to the next question. I'm telling you that gap between the questions, or that gap, those moments of silence, that will tell you so much about
Yeah. Our fire chief does a really good job. He sits in on all of our new hire interviews because he really feels like that's really important for him
them.
to, you know, and I agree. And but he does a really good job when we get really super, super nervous people in an interview that maybe aren't doing a great job answering the questions, but there's something good about them. He will stop and he'll say, "Hey, we're not gonna do the questions right now. Just tell me about," and and
Yeah.
they'll write down, and then you hear all these great things about them. It's like, "Okay, let's pick back up."
Yeah. That's a great way to do it too. That warm up question I've found over the years, and you get a lot of information about them, but also it really does. It's like stretching out before you work out, right? If you just ask them a question like that, It allows them to kind of think creatively before they start answering your more specific questions. So no matter what, it's valuable.
You got anything else?
Yeah, you know, it's just interesting. I listen and it might just be that it's just got to be interesting that you get a lot of people from the military, and maybe you don't face some of the challenges that we face, because we get a lot of people that come, they're still living at home. Right?
Yeah.
Like, they're still at home, they've never had a job. We've hired a few
Mhm.
people recently, they never worked, never had a job. This is their first job, and you're like, "What?" I was working at 14, Like, this is
Right.
wild. It's crazy, so it's just it's very interesting to hear just the different take on it and hear a different side, but, these are all just great points to even if they are brand new, like, it's still, I wanna know about you, and even they're not gonna have a resume, right? Like, what's on your resume? I went to school, I got a high school diploma. But yeah, letting them talk and letting them it's just signs of organizations evolving, and I really enjoy hearing about some of the things that, you're doing in your interview process. Because again, when we all went through, I'm sure it was just very structured, like boom, 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 kind of maybe a more intimidating environment. And now we're trying to, ease that a little bit, make people a little more comfortable because we really want to know who you are, right? Over the years, you could go and look on the internet, like how to answer interview questions, how to write a resume, how to do all these things. And it's cool to hear your take on it because you don't want any of that. Like, I don't want any of that. Like, we could all prepare, we could all
Yeah.
do our homework and do check these boxes of what we're supposed to do, but that doesn't matter. And especially in a profession like ours, where we want to know who you are at your core, besides all that BS you chat GPT'd, like, don't care about that. So it's just kind of cool to hear, all these, there's just so much out there and a lot of people doing some great things. And you just see the evolution of what it means to have a career, how to apply for a career, what cultures evolving look like. And I think that's, every tidbit and every person that we talk to, we get to just extrapolate some of that information and be like, here it is. Here's one way. Like you were saying, just because I did it this way doesn't mean it's going to work for you, but it might, right? you
Yeah.
know Here are the risks, this is what I did, this is why it worked, and it's just very I just love hearing the stories. I love seeing the evolution of organizations and how they hire, how they change cultures, how they just keep it going is just it's motivating and it's empowering, and I hope for our listeners it is too, because we could take little bits from everybody that we talk to and continue to grow these networks. And everybody wants progress. Everybody, a lot of us that talk leadership and stuff, we all say the same things. And I think what's cool for Carrie and I, lately too, is we just get to kind of be on the other side of things where we get to sit down with people like you and have conversations. So it's not so much what we think about leadership anymore. It's just trying to get out of other people. Hey, what do you think? So it's like every episode we get to talk to someone new and I get to take what we talked to you about and like apply it to that conversation. Be like, well, what'd you do here? And you just
Yeah.
get all this information. So it's just extremely beneficial. And we definitely appreciate your time today and
Sure.
I do
the
have one more. I have one more question that
yeah.
just came to me. You talk about you promote based off those 4 pillars and you do your
Mhm.
evals off those how what kinds of things are in your promotion process to kind of weed those things out?
So we have a pretty unique system that we kind of fought for over the years. So I took interviews out of our process because, well, who does well during interviews? You're extroverts. So who doesn't do well then
You're
subsequently?
introverts.
You're
Yeah.
introverts get murdered. Like, it's ugly during an interview for an introvert sometimes. I know because I'm an introvert. And so you can train it, you can train it, you can train it, you can get better at it. But when it comes down to brass tacks, your extroverts will come out on top every time. And I sat in on one of the promotion boards. So you said that your chief listens in on the interviews and all that stuff. I don't. I allow the board at the rank that that person is trying to promote to run the promotion board. So if you're trying to be a captain, I convene a board of captains. All my captains are on the board. They have to have 100% agreement with the candidate that should be promoted, because we usually have one, maybe two people promoted at a time. We don't have a high turnover rate. Only have like 50 people. So, um, So the way that we do it is we look at those things: the attitude, teamwork, grit, lead by example, and we have an Excel sheet, it's a vectoring tool, and so what I was getting a lot of from HR was, well, how do you measure someone's attitude? I said, well, when you get on Yelp and you go to a restaurant and your waiter drops your plate on the table and walks off all snide like, because you're in a French restaurant, that's what they do. It's fun. Anyway, but they've got an attitude because maybe they're having a rough day. But what do you do on Yelp? You mark the restaurant down because the waiter had an attitude. So you look at the food quality, you look at whatever these things are on Yelp, and you can rate them for all these different things. I said that's that's what we're doing. We're looking at who is this person 80% of the time. Their interview. Why should I do an interview? We work with these people. So I promote from within. And if they're promoting, then because if they're not promotable, whose fault is that? If they're not succession plan, if they don't have their certification, if they don't have their qualification, if they don't know the job, it's my fault as the chief. So I need to make sure that my people are promotable. Then I promote from within. And as much as possible, I promote from within. And so they know what the expectation is: attitude, teamwork, grit, lead by example. It's in their annual evaluations. We're going to hold you to this every year for your performance appraisals, performance evals. So why would we promote you on something different? Your interview is when you show up to work every day. Do you have a good attitude? You can be an introvert with a good attitude. you know, you're not fighting and arguing all the time, and you're not, you're a good teammate. So attitude, teamwork, locked in right there. Grit, that's their work ethic. Do they finish what they start? And then no matter what rank they're at, are they leading a program or a team? Are they in some way or another being an excellent follower to somebody else? Are they a senior man? Are they whatever the case may be, are they leading from where they're at? We take all those things into consideration. If you're trying to be a captain, I convene a board of all the captains. They run the vectoring tool. They look at the candidates. They advocate for who they think should be promoted. They get it down to the top 2 or 3 candidates. Then it becomes a dogfight. And then I've had them walk in that room and walk out in 3 minutes. I've had them walk in that room and come out 3 hours. So sometimes it comes down to the last 2 and they're just trying to hash out who it should be. And then sometimes it's super obvious. So why waste a lot of time?
Yeah, we've tried to incorporate similar things, but kind of differently because I feel like as our department has grown, when we were a much smaller department, I feel like we did kind of know, and you could put a board together. But the bigger we've gotten, I think sometimes, and we have had people ask, well, why can't we put in there something like, well, we know their past, or we know what they're doing at work or not doing at work,
Mm-hmm.
blah blah blah, all those things. And I think sometimes some of our captains or some of our senior people might get overlooked because some of our senior people are very flashy, right? They are telling and showing, I am doing, I'm doing, I'm doing. And so those folks are like, yeah, we should promote them because they're doing. And then we have some folks that are doing tons of things, but kind of undercover.
So
So,
either they're really humble and they're not bragging about what they're doing, or they're introverts and
yeah.
they're not a flashy individual. And that was what I found. I walked in one time. They were doing a promotion board. They do it in our conference room. My locker is in the conference room, right in the back. There's a little separate room. It's got a couple lockers in it. My locker's in there. I was getting changed because I was going to go work out. And I heard them discussing with a candidate on the phone that was interviewing. And when I got off the phone, I kind of looked over their shoulders. I saw what everybody was marking. That was an introvert. He wasn't marked very well. And then I was like, that's interesting. So I waited, and the next guy they talked to was an extrovert, and they were like, "Oh yeah, yeah," they were all excited afterwards. "Oh, that was good, that was good." So they marked him really high, and I said, "Okay, can we have a conversation here real quick?" I said, "Do y'all realize that the introvert actually answered the question, and the extrovert didn't answer the question at all that was asked? Here's the question you asked, and the extrovert gave you lasers, smoke, mirrors. It was a wonderful show. I saw the whole thing, but he didn't say a damn thing to do with that question." And then the introvert answered the question, but then after that wandered off the phone. He's like wanted to move on to the next question because that's an introvert. So what you're doing is you're holding somebody accountable for their actual characteristic. That's who they are. That's their trait. They can't change that. An introvert's never going to be an extrovert. But when you think about real leadership being at the mentorship level, because real leadership is mentorship, that's how I know Kyle. I work with Kyle. I give Kyle a training plan on how to get better or a succession plan on how to promote, I dig down into what he's good at, what he needs to improve upon. I know Kyle, that's mentorship. That's where real growth happens. So that's actual leadership. So how many people do you mentor at a time? At a time, it's a one-on-one. You might be mentoring 3, 4 people. You're usually not doing it in the same room. Usually it's one-on-ones. Isn't that an introvert's wheelhouse? One-on-ones? You have a lot of really, really, really effective leaders that are introverts that were just being passed up for the interview because they're not as flashy. What I would recommend probably, Carrie, is getting very clear on the expectations of what you want to see in the candidates when they promote. And then you'll start to see a real big difference. So when we started breaking down what we wanted to see out of people and we got real raw, and it was, okay, attitude, teamwork, grit, lead by example. You have some people that are really good teammates as far as like they really know the job, they like to teach, but when they teach, they talk down to everybody like they're a piece of shit. So that's attitude. Maybe they're a 1 on attitude. Job knowledge and stuff come down to being, are they a good teammate? Yeah, maybe they're a 5 on a 5-point scale. But that attitude, that dragged them back to a 1. You see? So once you start getting really clear on what the expectations are and what you want to see out of each person, if you get honest in that vectoring tool or whatever tool you guys use for that, if you just get real clear on it, but you have to get clear on what the expectations are. But if you do that, then it's real easy to start to ascertain real good data. One of the things again is grit, which is their work ethic. A lot of people start projects. They're great to hang out with, so attitude's on point. They're really good teammates. They know the job and they don't mind working. Cool. Awesome. They volunteer for everything when the chief's there. But as soon as the chief's not around, neither are they. You're looking around, oh, where'd that dude go? It was time to do some work. We're supposed to work on some projects. Where'd he go? You know, he wanted to look good for the Chiefs, so he volunteered in the room, but now it's time to do the work. Now we can find him. Or he's always too busy. Things like that. So they don't finish what they start. Yeah, we just slide him from that 5 to a 1 on that one. And then are they leading by example? So is this person actually leading, or are they not involved? They don't really plug into any teams, programs, things like that. They're not taking any leadership roles. If you're not taking any leadership roles when you're a firefighter in your followership role, then you're not giving us an opportunity to see you as a leader. So why should we consider you when it's time for promotion? You know. So, and it could be as simple as, hey, every day at 3 o'clock, as a firefighter, I drag everybody out there and I have them working out. Okay, that's leadership. It doesn't have to be fancy, like you pointed out before. It doesn't have to be this magic thing, but you could really kind of get it down to the brass tacks of it, which is just 2 words. Leadership comes down to just follow me.
Yeah, I love that you're able to do that. Kyle is in a state where I don't think you could pull that off, Kyle.
No, no, our promotional process is dictated by state law. It's all state
Yeah,
law.
yeah. A lot of people are stuck under testing only positions. If we're being honest, most departments that are testing only positions, other than your amazing test takers, other than your bookworms, nobody likes those systems. Because every single one of us in a department like that, every single one of us knows somebody that should have never been promoted. That's a problem. That's a problem. We used to have testing. We used to have projects. We used to have stations. We used to do all these crazy things. But it really comes down to what are they doing in the business world? You hire for attitude, not for skill. If you have the right attitude, I can teach you the skill. But if you got a shit attitude, I don't care how knowledgeable you think you are right now. You might be a subject matter expert in rescue or the best freaking whatever, but your information will eventually be outdated because if you don't have the right attitude, you're not going to accept that you need to change and you need to modify, you need to pivot, you need to learn more. You're going to have the humility to take a class and stay current. You're going to think, I already know the way because I took my EMT in 1996. I've been knowing how to be an EMT. How much shit has changed since 96, bro? I heard a guy say, I got mine in 96. And I said, yeah, I bet that's the last time you cracked that book open too. But um, so skills are great for now. Skills will eventually be outdated without the right attitude. Now, if you got the right attitude, then of course, people are going to have the skill locked in and a good attitude. Those are the people you want to promote. Department, we like to say we don't promote problem finders, we promote problem solvers. So problem solving is an attitude. You got the right attitude, we can teach you anything. The skill is the easy part. The attitude's the harder part.
Amen. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And
Uh,
thank you for the books. And I have a leadership library in the training center. And so any books that I find that I think have good words, I put them in the leadership library and people come grab them and swap them. And other people put books in there. So it is going in the leadership library.
and it's already pre-highlighted and underlined. I love it.
It is. And I always think about that. I'm like, oh, well, I don't care. They'll be like, well, Carrie thought this was important or
Hey,
whatever.
I'm all about it. Like some people are just going to read the greatest hits. I'm good with it.
All right. Well, we greatly appreciate your time and
Yeah,
coming and chatting with us. And we hope to keep in touch and get you back on the show at another time and
I'm in.
talk whatever else comes up.
All right.
All right.
Love it.
Well, folks, thanks for tuning in again. And like, subscribe, and follow, and send us comments. And anybody else you guys would like to hear us chat with on the show, send us recommendations. If you are out there in listener world and you'd like to be on the show and you got something to say, then hit us up on LinkedIn or email or on socials, and we will talk soon.